Hey, what's up guys, WRG here with another video. So today I want to start a new series where I go over different types of concepts, basically mindset and philosophical concepts that I think everyone should understand. And today we're going to be going over OODA loop, which is very important. It applies to combat, it applies to everyday life, it applies to business, all types of different applications. So if you guys like these videos, please like, share, subscribe, really helps out the channel. But without further ado, let's get started. OODA loop, also known as the Boyd cycle, is an acronym for Observe, Orient, Decide, and Act. It is described as a four-step decision-making process that is utilized to defeat an opponent or foe. However, this simplified definition does not even begin to encompass the magnitude and importance of OODA loop. So let's start by going over a brief history of OODA loop. So OODA loop was developed by a military strategist and United States Air Force colonel by the name of John Boyd. He began his career as a fighter pilot in the Korean War and has since become one of the greatest philosopher warriors to ever live. To truly understand OODA loop and its origin, it's important to first look into the earlier works of John Boyd. In 1961, he wrote Aerial Attack, which is still renowned as one of the best descriptions of effective dogfighting tactics, still used by Air Force militaries around the world today. He also developed the energy maneuverability theory. This was an equation he developed in collaboration with a mathematician by the name of Thomas P. Christie, which calculated the total kinetic and potential energies of aircraft-specific energy. Okay, but what does that mean? So basically, he provided engineers and military personnel with a scientific, objective way of comparing aircraft designs in order to determine which was optimal for better maneuverability. He took into account variables such as velocity, thrust, drag, and weight. Arguably, his most significant contribution to military strategy derived from a series of briefings in which he described as OODA loop. These briefings could be as long as 5 hours, so whoever thinks that OODA loop is simple, it's not quite so. This theory has been utilized by numerous militaries, companies, and even terrorist organizations around the world. The applications are far and wide if properly understood. Unfortunately, John Boyd never wrote a detailed paper on the topic, leaving much of his work subject to interpretation and a lack of credit being given to him by others. Interestingly, for being one of the greatest air-to-air combat strategists to ever live, he never had a single combat kill. He didn't even have one in the Korean War. And before he was to be deployed for the Vietnam War, he was actually pulled back at the last minute and ordered to Washington, D.C. in order to apply his energy maneuverability theory to prototype aircraft such as the F-16 Eagle and later on the F-16, which we've all come to know. Okay, let's take a closer look at the definition of OODA loop. OODA loop is simple in some regards since it's basically taking an implicit idea and explaining it explicitly. The power of this lies in the fact that when your adrenaline is pumping and your emotions are running rampant, your thoughts and normally logical way of processing information can easily become convoluted. OODA loop organizes an effective strategy that can be utilized in the heat of battle to gain a victory. It is a method for dealing with uncertainty which can be learned in order to defeat an opponent in a head-to-head competition. Once understood, OODA loop can help you thrive under some of the most challenging circumstances in various aspects of your life. Boyd argued that although the world around us is constantly changing, hence posing a challenge for us, the greater hindrance to our success is our inability to change our perspective. Once you have a better understanding, you will see less as a four-step process and you will see it more as a way of thinking. So let's go through the acronym step by step. So the first one is observe. So by observing, you're taking in information from a changing environment. We become an open system rather than a closed system. We gain knowledge and understanding, which will help us form new mental models. From a tactical perspective, we need to maintain our situational awareness at all times. This has been referred to as condition yellow, which is relaxed alert. There is no immediate threat, but you keep your head up and your eyes open. Learn where the exits are when you enter a new environment, take a look around, and note if anyone's behavior is abnormal or seems out of place. Two challenges we face in observation is observing imperfect or incomplete information and being overwhelmed with so much information that it's difficult to distinguish between a signal and noise. Franz P. Boessigna said, "Even if one has perfect information, it is of no value if it is not coupled to a penetrating understanding of its meaning, if one does not see the patterns. Judgment is key. Without judgment, data means nothing. It is not necessarily the one with more information who will come out victorious. It is the one with better judgment, the one who is better at discerning patterns." Okay, so the next step is orient. This is where our mental models exist and how everything in OODA loop works. You must learn to break apart old paradigms and build new ones in the face of a changing reality. Boyd referred to this as destructive deduction and creative induction. To illustrate this concept, he gave the following example. Okay, so imagine that you're on a ski slope with other skiers. that you are in Florida riding an outbound motorboat, maybe even towing water skiers. Imagine that you're riding a bicycle on a nice spring day. Imagine that you are a parent taking your son to a department store and that you notice he is fascinated by a toy tractor or tanks with rubber caterpillar treads. Now, imagine that you pull the skis off, but you are still on the ski slope. Imagine that you remove the outboard motor from the motorboat, and now you are no longer in Florida. And from the bicycle, you remove the handlebar and discard the rest of the bike. Finally, you take off the rubber treads from the toy tractor or tank. This leaves you with the following separate pieces: skis, outboard motor, handlebars, and rubber treads. What emerges when you put these pieces together? Okay, I'll give you guys a minute to think about it. And it's a snowmobile. Orienting is the ability to make figurative mental snowmobiles on the fly and in the face of uncertainty. Do not just stick to a single mental model or doctrine. You've got to have multiple mental models. And the models have to come from multiple disciplines, because all the wisdom in the world is not found from a single academic department. Some mental models that Boyd advocated every tactician to learn is mathematical logic, physics, thermodynamics, biology, psychology, anthropology, and conflict, or game theory. One should strive to destroy and create models. Maybe a specific model works better for a different application. Never stop orienting. Boyd said, orientation isn't just a state that you're in, it's a process. You're always orienting. Remember the acronym ABO, always be orienting. Okay, so you want to be confident that your mental models work before you need to use them. How can this be done? You have to study which mental models have previously worked in similar situations and then practice, train, visualize using these mental models. You could learn case studies, or like in sports, practice specific plays before they are needed. Decide what will work best and use it when you need to. Just like in sports, when you see the opportunity for a proven play you have rehearsed, you may skip this step, decide, and go straight from orient to act. The ability to quickly orient and act is referred to as implicit outcome and control by Boyd. When a person has mastered a specific domain, they are able to quickly align mental models with reality and then execute that mental model without having to decide. They simply act. Okay, this brings us to our next term, which is decide. Boyd described this phase as the component in which actors decide among action alternatives generated in the orientation phase. We will never find a mental model which is perfect for every specific situation, but what we must do is find one that is good enough. We have to hypothesize which mental model will work best. Okay, the last term is act, also known or referred to as your test. In this step, you determine if your hypothesis was correct. This step of action is not only part of a decision process, but also part of a learning process. We are testing hypotheses to see what works and what doesn't work. If we were correct, then we win the battle. If we were not, then the OODA loop starts again with new information. In an ideal situation, we are testing multiple mental models at the same time to figure out which works best. In war, this can mean attacking your enemy with various tactics. When you decide which target and tactics are providing the best results, you exploit that mental model to its fullest potential until it no longer works. Then the process begins all over again. This concept could be applied to business where you try various approaches and see what works best. John Boyd once said, under OODA loop theory, every combatant observes the situation, orients himself, decides what to do, and then does it. If his opponent can do it faster, however, his own actions become outdated and disconnected to the true situation, and his opponent's advantage increases geometrically. In a head-to-head competition, each individual or group is trying to work his way through the loop faster or more effectively than his opponent. Merely understanding this concept will not help you if you don't have the right tempo. Another important concept to understand is that by rapidly cycling through OODA loop, you are resetting your opponent's OODA loop and causing him confusion. It sends them back to square one or observation. This in turn provides you with more time to complete your loop faster than your opponent. Your goal is to complete your loop before your opponent does. According to research conducted on active shooter situations, the best response isn't to flee or hide, but rather to immediately close the distance and incapacitate your attacker. This is also a recommendation from Homeland Security when the shooter is close to you. When you immediately attack him, you're disrupting his plan and causing him to reset his OODA loop. In order to be able to realistically execute this, you must practice and visualize yourself taking action. If you don't, then you'll just end up freezing when the time comes. The body can't go where the brain hasn't been. What often gets overlooked by folks studying the OODA loop is that when Boyd talked about rapid tempo, he often meant rapid changes in tempo. He argued that when it comes to winning a competition or conflict, our actions need to be surprising, ambiguous, and varying. Speeding up and slowing down your actions quickly and irregularly can create confusion just as much as sometimes more than simply blowing through your OODA loop as quickly as possible. If the enemy is expecting a sudden or quick attack from you, but you instead delay, you may cause your enemy some hesitation type of moment, and that could be exploited. Okay guys, so that was just a brief overview of the OODA loop. Again, like I've said, he's gone through 5 hours or more just talking about this specific topic. It can be applied to all types of applications in your life. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please like, share, subscribe if you did. Thanks for watching guys. WRG out. OODA loop, also known as the Boyd cycle, is an acronym for Observe, Orient, Decide, and Act.